Welcome to Round Hill Radio, the podcast from Round Hill Community Church. Through our conversations, we discover the holy in the ordinary, find moments of grace and peace, and redefine what we're talking about when we talk about faith. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Leslie.
I remembered the intro. I wasn't sure if I would.
Bravo.
About halfway through, I panicked. But we made it through. Happy Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Brisk, chilly, bright Monday
Yes.
here in Connecticut. We hope you are all doing well.
Mm-hmm.
And we're glad to be back, although I realized, so we took a couple weeks off, which was very restorative.
Good.
To me, at least. I hope it was to you. I hope it was to all of you. And I realized next week is a holiday Monday.
Yes.
And we record on Monday. So we'll be back in 2 weeks after that again.
That's right.
But we thought we'd pop in and say hello. And we have a new book you are looking into and using as a resource material for worship.
Indeed.
So we thought we'd learn about that together because I have not read the book. So I thought we can all learn together. Ed can educate us all.
Beginner's mind.
Yes, I am fully ready to learn and absorb and enjoy.
Nice.
So what is the book, and what prompted you to use this as a material for worship?
All right. Good questions.
Thanks.
Let's start there. What prompted this? Well, this book is called Deeply Woven Roots, Improving the Quality of Life in Your Community. And that's something we're thinking a lot about.
Sure.
Especially now, how do we improve the quality of life in our communities when in many cases we still can't see one another as much as we would like to.
Right.
So the author of this book is Gary Gunderson. Gary is an ordained pastor in the American Baptist Church.
Mm-hmm.
He has spent almost his entire adult life working in the field of public health.
Okay.
So he has not worked specifically in a church congregational context, although he's a very active member in his local church. But he serves on the faculty at Wake Forest University, and he's vice president of the School of Public Health.
Mm-hmm.
So he brings all of that experience about improving the quality of life in community, especially from a health perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, one of the things that they've managed to do at Wake Forest is to reach out to Baptist churches throughout the state of North Carolina to assist with the delivery of healthcare services.
Oh, wow.
The understanding being that when people are in community, they might be more likely to follow through on their appointments and on their checkups because someone is saying, so did you have that checkup that you said you were going to have this past week? Did you get that physical? So anyway, that's been one way that he's used to, I think, to advance public health in the state of North Carolina in particular.
Wonderful.
So this book just seemed like it was ready to read again. It's interesting because it was published in 1997, which seems like an eon ago.
Yeah, it does.
Anything before 2000 is really, seems like a long, long time ago.
It does and it doesn't, because I think my brain thinks the 90s were the last decade.
Right. Okay. There you go. All right.
So,
maybe it's a little fresher.
It's a little, it's fine.
Well, I think this is one of those books, though, that seems to really be standing the test of time. And it is the best book I've ever read on the practice of ministry.
Okay.
So it's really appropriate, not just for clergy reading it, however, but for local communities of faith. And here's the thing I like most about the book. At a time when it's very easy to reference the decline of the church, both in numbers and influence.
Sure.
Gary Gunderson is all about talking about the strengths of the church. So what are the strengths that the church brings to the building up of the common good, both in small geographical areas where the church might be located, but also in much larger ways. And I would use as an example of that right now, the resettlement of Afghan evacuees in the town of Greenwich.
Right. Round
Hill Community Church is part of a small organization, Rising Hope Resettlement Group. We're together with 3 other organizations, 3 churches and 1 secular organization. But I was thinking last night about the impact of that, because while we are resettling Afghan evacuees in our community, those Afghan evacuees have a lot of relatives still back in Afghanistan or on other military bases across the country waiting to be settled somewhere. And so those people are saying to their friends and relatives in other parts of the country, you won't believe what these people are doing for us. So it's a very positive message. And we have the strength to do it because we're doing it together. So for all those reasons, I thought this would make a good book to read. This is a good time to be thinking about the strengths that we have to offer. Even if overall, yes, there's a diminishment in numbers. The church has gone through periods of diminishment in the past.
Sure.
Right? Radically so. And found a way to navigate itself, remake itself, reinvent itself. So here we are.
Well, and that challenge that comes from like taking a hard look at what you're doing and who you are as an organization, I think is always can be positive.
Yeah.
And useful. And like, what do we really want to be spending our time, our resources, human, financial, economical, all those things. So how are you using this text to inform your sermons in the next coming weeks?
So we're going to be exploring this book right up through the end of February.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically a book for the Christian season of Epiphany. And part of the trick of this is that the individual chapters are helpfully laid out in terms of the strengths that the church brings. So it's the strength to pray, the strength to convene, the strength to speak out for justice, all of these things. Gary, in his book, though, does not typically list scripture texts that which would have been super helpful.
That would have been really nice, yeah.
I'm just saying. Gary, second, third edition of this book, whatever, let's just kind of keep the preacher in mind here, okay?
Come on. I like that. I like that a lot.
Who can in turn help the director of music, okay? So there's a lot of positives.
I mean, come on.
Little helpful section at the end of each
that.
chapter.
Thanks.
So failing that, however, part of the job here is to read through a particular chapter and then to think, okay, what are some texts? What are some hymns, choral anthems that connect with this and help to flesh it out? So each week, going through the process of, first of all, choosing the chapters that we want to focus on. And I'll be doing this, of course, in league with the Reverend Shannon White, who's going to be choosing chapters from the book that she will focus on when she's preaching. And so it's looking at texts that relate and also what's happening in the world right now.
Right.
This particular week, of course, is the week when we celebrate the birthday of Martin Luther King Jr. and his life, his significance, but also the broader impact of the civil rights movement. So I'm really focusing. Dr. King liked to use the phrase, the strength to love, and the way that love requires a particular kind of strength. And we often have more capacity to love than we recognize. So that's what I'll be focusing on for this particular week. But yeah, each week is going to be a conversation between text, music, events going on in the world, Gary Gunderson's book.
Yeah. It's always interesting, I find, when I select music for worship and, I always do my best to make sure the themes line up, but they're not necessarily overtly obvious connections. Sometimes they're a little tenuous. I'll be the first to admit. Sublime, yes. And it's really exciting to see as we're in the experience of worship, how connections come up with the music that I didn't anticipate. That's my favorite part.
Fun.
It's my favorite part of the job.
Yeah.
I found yesterday when we did this amazing arrangement of the Shaker anthem, Love is Little, which I thought, I was sort of picturing like, I get, there's like the Epiphany thing, there's the baptism of Jesus, and I always have to remind myself that Jesus wasn't a baby. I was picturing like a baptism like we're all used to.
Right, yeah. Baptized as a full adult.
Yeah, it was like he was like standing up. And so it was funny to sort of see all the pieces kind of weave together, and all, the piece was sort of, all the different ways that love can be, kind of evokes that like 1 Corinthians
it's beautiful
situation. I love that anthem so much. It's really, I like really like clean. I hesitate to use the word austere, but that's what comes to mind. Like really clean, unaccompanied choral music. That's like my happy place. And this hit right there. I was like, yes, I want to do that. So it was it was interesting to see that, and then we did some sort of like bigger pieces and smaller pieces, and the introit was Christ Has Made This Your Foundation, the hymn,
Right.
which I was originally going to schedule as the opening hymn, but I have this amazing hymnal that one of our congregation members, Susie Simpson, took control of for like a number of years and would write the date that we sang the hymn.
What a gift. Yeah.
Incredible. And I opened to it and there were no dates on it. And that hymn for me used to be in my church growing up. I think that was used as almost like a doxology type situation. It wasn't used as it, but it was used within the liturgy. Mm-hmm. So I sang like every week. And so coming here and then realizing there wasn't the same like connection.
Sure. Yep.
So I was like, well, I guess I'll have the soloist sing it then.
It was perfect.
It worked nice.
Yeah. So congregations develop their own unique passions, right? For certain music.
For sure.
And that's really interesting to see how that develops.
Yeah. Yeah. And particularly here, there's a lot of like, earth and creation hymns we like and use a lot, which I think is wonderful. They kind of tell you, there's that old saying, and I'm going to butcher it because I can't remember exactly what it is, but that congregations sing what they believe. Mm-hmm. Like go to your congregation's most sung hymns, and that tells you what they believe. Right.
Their theology.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I'm thinking, Leslie, because of the specific context of Gary Gunderson's book, maybe another way of saying this is that there are certain hymns for every congregation that make them strong.
Yeah.
Right. Where people feel like, I feel stronger now because I've sung that hymn. I feel like I'm able to face more of the world because of that.
Well, and you're singing it together. That idea of the strength of community, we talk about, all the different ways there are to worship and the different ways, we of course offer our online service, which has been, I think, very good for people. I think it's been so well received and so helpful for people, especially during all this COVID upheaval. And I think, I think it's natural for some of our members to be concerned that would replace in-person worship.
Right.
But I think there's no replacing the feeling and experience of community. I think they're different. I think they're both equally valuable, but I think they're very different.
I agree. I've certainly come to appreciate in the past year that that experience of being in the physical space with other people and hearing their voices. And even now, when you have the soloists coming down to the main floor of the sanctuary to accompany us, and by the way, Gary Gunderson has a chapter called The Strength to Accompany.
Oh, nice.
I can hear their voices. Now, their voices make me feel stronger. They actually make me want to sing out more. And interestingly enough, that's really just two people, right? Yeah. Coming down.
Two or three.
So, 2 or 3. So going back to that lovely Shaker piece, that love is little.
Love is little.
Right? That a little can go a long way. Yeah. And I was talking with a friend of mine last week about part of the spiritual meaning of Christmas for me is that you think about God inhabiting the world in the form of a tiny baby. That's really the Christmas message, right? One of the tiniest human form, the tiniest human form available, right? And so it indicates to me that God has a bias for tiny things.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you get a little baby in a little country, like in the very backwater of the Roman Empire, right? Who would have thought? And yet there's incredible strength that flows out of that one life. And just as there's so much strength that comes from one soloist voice when you're standing 10 or 15 away, and you think, I can sing along now.
Yeah, you can kind of fit into that space. I mean, but what a voice, let's be honest.
Well, that's true. Right?
It helps.
So it's not my voice.
Oh, right? You have a great voice.
Well, but I do think that, you and I have often talked about, I think we have mixed feelings about the word strength.
Yeah.
Right? Because
collectively,
especially in our culture, strength is associated with forms of expression about domination.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
and to think about, okay, so what are the forms of strength that don't have to do with that? And actually, Gary Gunderson has a quotation in his book, I'm sure it will surface in the coming weeks, where he says specifically that the strength of love has nothing to do with the force of domination. It's really about the force of connection, which is what we've been looking for these last 2 years. How do we stay connected? It's about the force of one person supporting another. And all of that becomes so essential to us as community. But when we're living out that kind of strength, we're also standing against the false kind of strength, right? That's about demeaning, dehumanizing people. And we've got a lot of that kind of strength around the world these days. Right. So
think of the term sort of quiet strength.
Yes.
Is a phrase that sort of was what that evokes. I'm thinking of something, and I'm with your amazing skills, I'm sure you can turn this into like some really epic sacred message. But it occurred to me this morning because I did a Peloton. So I did a Peloton strength class, which is on a mat. You're not on the bike. You're just standing on a mat and you have your different weights. And they advise you on what weights you can use and just say, adjust to whatever you feel like. I was feeling brave. So I did the same weight as the instructor was doing. Last time I did not. And this time I was like, I think I could go heavier. And it reminded me of something I had experienced before, which is that it's not that the weight feels any lighter. Like, so I'm picking up first. Okay. So I was using a 10-pound dumbbell, and then I went to a 15-pound dumbbell. So I'm holding this 15-pound dumbbell, and it's not that it's like, oh, all of a sudden this is a lighter weight than it was 2 weeks ago. The weight sensation of it is still, this is heavy compared to 10 pounds. But that doesn't mean I can lift it any less. It's like, I think in my head, I always thought, well, once I'm like really strong, 15 pounds will feel like nothing or whatever. It feels like 15 pounds. It will always feel like 15 pounds.
Right.
But it means I actually can lift it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like there's like a sermon in there or something.
I'm sure there is.
But it's not that it feels any lighter, but I have greater strength, and so I can lift it.
Well, I think one thought that comes to me, the discomfort of that added weight no longer has the same relevance. Right?
Yeah.
You feel like I have the capacity to do that.
Yeah. There's
still going to be a kind of discomfort that goes along with it.
Right.
But the discomfort is not going to stop you.
Right.
Right. And I do think that as I've been reading about what people do to form a new habit, it almost seems, let's say, a habit that's good for you.
Sure.
All right, we'll start from that baseline.
Those are harder to do. Yeah.
Those are harder to do. Exactly. And part of it is that there's the need to live through some necessary discomfort and embrace the discomfort. And I think there's something about our culture, where we want it to, we think it'll all ease out over time.
Sure.
Right. But that, for some reason, that discomfort is there. It stays there. It's just that we start to think, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
I can.
Right?
Yeah. And that is a kind of strength.
I like that.
Right. That is a different kind of strength.
Yeah. So it sounds like the word strength, and we're looking at it through this book, has so many facets that, once we get past the sort of initial, the initial thoughts we have about it, or the initial reaction we have perhaps against it due to, other uses of the word, that we can actually find a lot in there.
We can. I think in some ways we have to reclaim it.
I like that.
Yeah. So that's going to be part of our mission, right? For the next month and a half, we'll get to reclaim features of the word strength that will bring us new life and fresh hope.
I love that. Well, thank you all for joining us today for Round Hill Radio. Round Hill Radio is brought to you by the friends and members of Round Hill Community Church.